Do you feel like how do you react? And I'm not sure if you're even exposed to this, because I'm not quite certain how energy works at your level, but when you project what you project out into the world just by being you, because there is an energy that you put out, you will get resistance every now and then. And maybe one day you'll travel and might see or be exposed to a frequency that is not your own at all. Like a really, compared to you, like let's say you ran into a junkie who's on heroin or something like this.
Yeah.
Like, how do you react to energy that is negative?
There is no negative energy.
What I mean by that is, I've experienced this in a nightclub, so let me describe it to you, and you can give it whatever name you give it in your spectrum, the way that you look at things.
Sure.
But there are sometimes individuals in a nightclub that will be on drugs, and I can sense that energy taking over their entire being. So they are no longer there. They seem like a gray person to me, because it's no longer them in control, and I
Sure.
can tell.
Yeah.
It's an energy that has taken over them.
Right.
Whether they're too drunk, whether they're on heroin, I don't know what this is,
Right.
but I know it's negative in my view. It is not an energy that's giving positive to others around them. So let's just
Right.
put it
Yeah.
that way. That's
Okay.
what I mean by
Yes.
negative. It sucks, it takes, it
Yeah.
does not give. And so when you are exposed to this type of energy out there, how do you react to it? Are you just neutral?
I just see it just like I see any other life form. It's just there, and I see the journey, and I immediately understand why this is necessary. It's just a variation. There's nothing dangerous about it. It's simply that journey. And then when you have different energies, and we can call it like entities or whatever, that has attached itself to people, it's no different from a virus and bacteria or whatever it is. And it is still the exchange between that individual and these life forms. And they both benefit from it. People can be controlled by all sorts of things: their families, spouses, friends, fashion, TV, trends, fear.
Anger, ambition.
Exactly. So, you know, sometimes it can be energies. It's not better or worse, it's just a variation. And remember that most entity life forms, as we often refer them to, energetic life forms, they have a very important job. When you look at bacteria, their job is to help us break down material. And in our body, we have microbes involved in almost any and every kind of chemical process. So, you know, we have, for instance, a candida, which is, you know, a fungus. And many people experience having too much of it. You know, there are like more than 200 different variations of that fungus. But there's a reason why there's a overpopulation. It's normally because you eat too much sugar and yeast and have heavy metals in your body. They help the body break that down. Now, just like bacteria and fungus, they will break down material that the body is not able to break down by itself. And what we can call entity life forms are life forms that assist nature in breaking down energy. Just like in nature, we do have fungi, we do have insects, we do have a lot of life forms that assist this planet in breaking down material. It's absolutely necessary. So when you see leaves fall off a tree to the ground, it will be broken down, and it will become part of the, you know, the soil, and the new plants can come. Energetically, it's the same. When someone is out of balance, they will produce a lot of energy that cannot be introduced to nature directly. It will have to be digested. So these life forms, they live off of energy just like fungi, and they break down the energy and they digest it so it can be broken down into a form of energy that nature can use. So whenever we have too much of these types of beings attach us, is because we produce that energy and they are actually helping us. They're helping nature. It's not dangerous. It's simply an exchange. One could also say that if you have too much candida, it could be an indication that you should look at your diet. Just like if you have these spirits or whatever you want to call it in your system, it could be an indication that you need to look at, what am I actually producing in my life? What kind of energies am I, channeling, or, and that's okay. It's not dangerous. And remember, no matter what journey someone's on, that's where they're at. And when you are in a certain point in your evolution and there's certain things you need to learn, that's what will manifest. So there's no point in judging it. I only see whatever people do, whatever they experience, that's where they're at. And they're going through what is necessary for them to learn and heal. Otherwise, it would not happen.
So this is your perspective on war and famine and the depletion of nature, politics, all those things that disturb normal human beings. This is how you look at those things, kind of like teachers.
Yes, it disturbs their sleep. It's necessary because otherwise it wouldn't happen, because it's an extension of their mind and consciousness. It's like, for instance, when you have an attitude you're not aware of, and then you're being triggered so that it translates into an action. You say, did I do that? What's wrong with me? Then you become aware of that programming in yourself, and then you can do something about it. This happens
the autopilot.
Exactly.
Is an extension of your evolution.
Yes, exactly. It happens on individual level, but also in collective levels. So when we see the result of our collective ways of thinking, then we can do something about it. And for instance, Second World War, good example. Before the Second World War, in the Western world, they had all these theories about different races and, all of that. And, who's more evolved, and they had this whole
eugenics,
science. Yes.
perpetuated by Darwin's uncle.
It was a full science. It was accepted science. And because we then saw what it could lead to, we took a step back and said, oh, this is probably not something we should continue doing. And then we went back and basically got rid of that whole science, because we understood this is not productive. And this is how it is. Sometimes we have to see the full extent of our own thoughts and patterns before we're willing to do something about it. Because this had been a science for decades, and it was just accepted, this is how it is. But now we saw the full version of what happens when we take the full consequence of this.
And when you militarize it.
Exactly. So this is why we do things, is basically to test our own beliefs and our own assumptions and theories about ourselves and existence, both as individuals but also as collective consciousness. So whenever we do something, it's because it's already a part of our consciousness, and this is how we become aware of it. As I said, we cannot see our own light. We can only see it once it's being projected onto the world. And therefore, we can't judge it, because it's the only way consciousness, awareness can be built. We can, however, promote the learning. And that's part of what I teach, is, enabling people to learn faster. Because often we have a tendency to project the same thing over and over
again. I'm guilty of that.
Exactly. But the spiritually intelligent way of doing it is noticing the first time. And we can learn how to do that. But then we need to understand how to look for it, how to listen, how to take it in, how to process it and learn and transform and realize and change.
Because a lot of this stuff is subconscious. Obviously,
Yes.
until you're aware of something, you can't really point it out, huh?
Exactly. And what happens as you expand spiritually is that you become more aware for real. And you do listen and you do see more and more. And your presence, this is often what I say, it is the result of spiritual work, is your level of true presence. Mm-hmm. That is also how aware are you.
I could feel it. Sometimes, you know, when I hide for a very long time and I go deep, my version of deep, mm-hmm. which is just contemplating spiritual stuff for long periods of time. So I'll spend like maybe a good 2 weeks, you know, researching some Rudolf Steiner Rosicrucian stuff or something, and then I'll come outside. And then it's like, all of a sudden, for some strange reason, because I was just thinking about these concepts of energy and the expansion of energy at such a molecular level, when I go out and I'm in a city and the cars are swinging by, I feel a lot more. And it's because I was contemplating that string of what something is at a molecular level, that now that I'm going out, even though, you know, I'm walking outside into a city and like a normal human being, I am thinking of that city on a molecular level now, because I was contemplating this subject for so long, and it makes me super sensitive. Like I could hear noises that are really far away, and I can feel people's eyes when they're behind me, and turn around and I'm like, I saw you looking at me, but I don't have eyes in the back of my head. Right. Really weird.
Why is that weird?
Because it's weird, because I was reading books, you know, I wasn't meditating and extending my energy.
No, but you were doing basically a practice. Reading is also a practice that affects your consciousness, because you fill yourself with information, and information is vibration. So when that affects your consciousness, it affects your mind, your nervous system, and it affects how your brain, you know, analyzes the energy and impulses around you. And of course you have like eyes everywhere. It's not limited to here. Remember that we're swimming in energy and information, and we pick up on it. It's not limited to our eyes. And the information of someone like looking at you, that's vibration. And you can pick, you know, up on that in any part of yourself. Because first of all, you are energy, you are consciousness. You know, in physics, the human body is defined as a force field. Biology is further down the list. That comes later. First, the particles and atoms and structures and molecules.
And the fields they emit.
Exactly. So it's all of that. And when we think of that's the reality, and like every single part of, you know, particles, atoms, molecules, they vibrate. And one also knows that those vibrations will travel far. So it means that when someone is doing something kind of towards you, that information will be directed towards you. It means that you are actually picking it up in your subconscious. But when you're being exposed to information that expands your awareness in that direction, you will start noticing. Because it's not limited to your biology. You are a walking force field of consciousness and energy. That's the physics of it. You're not biology.
So when you start allowing and including more, which is what you do to get to where you are, then I'm still stuck on this judgment thing because I just can't. Okay, because how do I? This is too much. How do you go out there feeling so sensitively everything around you, so much that you can even feel the plants,
Right.
you can feel the cars,
Yes.
you can feel the people, the animals.
Yeah.
What the fuck, dude? I mean, seriously, like, hold on a minute. How do you, without judgment, regulate so that it doesn't affect you in a negative way?
Because I have no resistance. You only need to regulate when you have resistance, because that's based on what you think you can tolerate, what you think you can accept, and the rules and value systems that you have. When you have no resistance, you accept all of it because it's life. And you see what we can refer to as God in everything, not as a concept. You actually, for real, see it, and that's what you relate to. So, in effect, you're only seeing God. You're only experiencing God. So you are experiencing the One, and you're being the One. So basically, you are itself. All of this is irrelevant compared to that.
But it's all part of that, right?
It's not part of, it is. This is the experience.
It's a lot.
This is the experience fractalization of it. When you can experience the original white light and you understand fully what it is because you've seen all the fractalizations, you understand it in its original form. That's what you see. That's what you relate to. You don't need the fractalizations.
Yes, because you've experienced the original crystal from which it all comes.
No, it's the opposite. It's because one has experienced every single fractalization, every single prism there is, and you understand them till a point where you have no resistance to it. And that means that you can relate to that original impulse because now you can see it. And then that's all you see.
I think the closest I've ever been to anything like that was a mushroom trip in Hawaii where I kissed a Toyota. I was like, this Toyota is one with everything. Mwah. There were globes connecting everything. Everything felt like it was just one thing.
But I think it's interesting that, you're right, when people take substances, it's often the only time they feel connected. To me, that's so funny because it tells volumes about human culture and the collective disconnectedness. That we have to take substances that basically relaxes the mind's belief systems to be able to experience something that is so fundamental for all life. Because this should be your normal state of mind. Maybe except for the kissing Toyota thing. But
I like the Toyota, it was awesome.
but it's that understanding and active sense of connectiveness.
Yeah.
And this is where the human culture will have to go. And then substances, of course, is not the answer. But for many people, I find it interesting that for many people, it's the first time they feel connectedness and they understand it for real.
It's the guard.
Yes.
The guard is up otherwise.
Right.
You know, your reticular activation system is blocking a lot of information on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people are paranoid in general and untrusting about their neighbors. You know, the trust from one man to another man, from one woman to another woman, from people to people is limiting in today's day and age, in major cities anyway. I mean, maybe it's different in the country.
It's always been
I don't
that
know,
way.
but
It's always been that way. But I think
Tough out there.
I often, people ask me a lot of, what is my take on substances? And it's like, I don't care. It's not my journey. And I think for people to have that experience can open them up. I sometimes compare substances to colonics. That if you're constipated, use it a couple of times, but if you use it on a regular basis, it shows that you will weaken your normal bowel movement. So it's like if you're clogged, if you feel that it can open you up, okay, try it. But then you have to be able to learn to get to that space on your own, because otherwise it will have the opposite effect. That, just like with caffeine, is like, once you drink it, you get that buzz, but after a while, the brain will adjust to it. And then when you don't drink coffee, you will be under. And it's the same thing. Whatever we eat of any kind of substance, the brain will adjust. So using these substances a lot will make it even more difficult for you to attain these levels of awareness on your own.
Yeah, well, I think there's a big difference between having a stage of life that you maintain through a lifestyle of consistency and discipline, through your spiritual evolution as a goal, and how you maintain that, compared to reaching a level, which isn't a stage, where you take a peak. And that's what I think drugs do, hallucinogenic drugs like ayahuasca, iboga, or, mushrooms or acid. I think people can take a peek of what is possible. But that's not your lifestyle. That's not your evolution. It's not like you reached a different stage in your evolution because of it. It's just showing you that this is a possibility. This is what a touching oneness can be experienced like. And it's only a side of it. It's a visual most of the time for me.
But I like how, the concept of this being a peak, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's a good way to explain it, because it is a peak. And then you have to, enter
work
for real.
To get there,
Yes, exactly. But because humans are consumers, often they fall into that trap of believing that this is how I attain that level of consciousness.
Yes, I know lots of circles that do this once a month, maybe twice. I disagree with that level of
But it's also part of the journey, because at
drugs.
some point you'll find out that it's not really working because I don't have the muscles, I don't have the structure to maintain this on my own. And that's also fine, because we have to go through all of this to figure out that I have to do the work myself. It's all up to me.
I feel like every time I do hallucinogenic drugs, I have to get cleaned. Like I feel like my frequency is lowered and things attach themselves to me, especially when I'm at parties like Burning Man and stuff like that. I got all sorts of stuff. I have to go get cleansed every time. I have a healing every time I go to one of the, because when you're in big crowds like that, you have people's stuff coming at you.
Of course.
And I feel like I'm weak whenever I'm drunk, whenever I'm high. I have to clean myself completely when I'm done with that situation, because even with ayahuasca and stuff like that, you leave yourself vulnerable, I think.
Yes, but it's part of the journey, and I think at some point, people grow out of it. But I can understand today that more and more people, they start sensing that there is more, that there is something behind this, and how can I get there? So I totally get it. And
it's tough to get their surface skimming, though.
Yes.
And in a generation where you try to take little bits and pieces from many different cultures around the world, and you're hoping to get results in 2 months or 3 months of a practice, it's going to be hard for a lot of people to find the kind of awareness and attainment or evolution that they seek ultimately.
But this is why substances seem to be the solution. And again, for me, it's fine. It's part of the process. It's part of the journey. And everyone figures out at some point that it's not really working. But again, it gave you a peak, and that's fine. But I totally understand that more and more people seem to believe that this is the solution because it seems like a quick fix. And when you're desperate, even just having a peak, is very attractive. And I totally understand it. My take is, if you want to have a peak, but leave it at that, and then do the work.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, the work, and that's years. That's years of dedication. I'm down with that. I am down with that.
So, like, how will we say that you're kind of, I experienced that you over the years have become more realistic also about what spirituality is and how to approach it. And it seems also you're starting to grow into this space in yourself where you do realize that it's work and it's real. So, how do you, how will you describe that slow realization? How has it changed your approach to spirituality?
You know what? I actually just kind of woke up one day and I realized how I don't want to call myself stupid because I don't want to put myself down, because I'm not stupid. I'm super curious, and I consider myself an intelligent human. But I was addicted to shortcuts for a very long time in my life. Shortcuts in life, like how could I do this really fast and get to where I'm going? Take the biggest chance, and because I take the biggest chance, get the most results. So put life in danger, whatever I have to jeopardize, it doesn't matter. And I did that with spirituality, I did that with my career, I did that with everything in life. And what I realized is it doesn't really work when it comes to spirituality.
It doesn't.
No, because you can take the biggest chance,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter.
Right.
You can go and visit all of these different places around the world and meet all of these shamans from different places around the world, but you're going to meet 50 charlatans before you meet 2 or 3 real teachers.
Yeah.
And so it took me 18 years of meeting a bunch of charlatans to figure it out.
Yeah.
Here I thought, hey, you go to Africa and you meet a couple shamans there. You go to Mexico and you meet a couple of teachers there. You visit temples in Cambodia and you meet a couple of amazing Buddhist monks over here, and they teach you or say certain things. But you can read a bunch of books, and the books will teach you. And I started to realize, I was like, wait a minute. I can't just read one book on the subject. This is a religion that's been around for 2,000 years. It has over 7 or 8 different sects within that religion. And Hinduism, Hinduism alone, it's like, it's a monotheistic religion with over 300, 4,000, 1,000 deities. I'm like, it's too much.
Yeah. How did
you can't shortcut something that's so big.
How did you, because you talked about having met a lot of, charlatans and all that, because this is what everyone has to go through. How did you figure out what was what?
My gut. My gut.
And how will you describe that so that
here's
people
the
can
thing.
understand?
Okay. So what I mean by charlatans is when you meet individuals that are really passionate, and at first you think they're passionate about helping. But when I realize they're charlatans is when I realize they're really energetic about wanting to help, but I realize that they do more sucking of energy than giving of energy or interchange of knowledge. And I started to realize this in my late 20s. Because before that, I didn't have the register for it. I would just do what I'm told or try to practice what I'm practicing and sit in these classes and not really pay attention. But as I got older, I started becoming picky about where I put my time because I just got tired of doing so many things and not getting any results. And then I started to become more sensitive to the energy that's being put out in a room, to the energy that's being put out, how much of that energy that the teacher is putting out is ego-based. And what I mean by that is like, are you projecting something that you believe, or are you feeling out what's happening and looking for a taught moment, a moment to teach? And that's where I realized the difference between the real deal and charlatans. Charlatans would project and hope something comes of the projection. Sometimes you get energy suckers who are like sucking energy and you can see them, you can tell that they're sucking energy. But then the real deal, which in my life right now, I only have out of my 18 years of looking, 4 humans that I find to be real teachers. You're one of them. And what I realized the difference is with them is they are present, and when they teach, they are also receiving. And what I mean by that is they are looking for the teaching moment to be revealed to them, and I can see the revelation of that through the class. And that doesn't happen with a lot of charlatans. You see a projected idea being promoted or perpetuated. You don't see an energy being put out and a receptivity. There's no reciprocity with a charlatan. There's only a projection of an idea of something that should be taught. And that's the difference. The teaching with real teachers in my book is happening in real time, and there's an exchange of energy, ideas, and you can see the energy evolve into something in a room. That doesn't happen when there's a projection happening.
Right. I agree with you, because when someone is projecting, it's because they're trying to convince. And if they're trying to convince, it's back to what I often talk about, that, you know, the classic thing about walking the talk, and they're not, but what I always say is that, you know, instead of, you know, live what you preach, I say, let your living be your preaching. And basically, instead of walking the talk, you should talk the walk, because that's the only time you can be sure that you're speaking from experience and truth. Because often when you are to walk the talk, you talk first and then you can convince yourself that you're walking it. If you walk it first, you will only speak from what you actually do, what you actually experience. And to me, when we teach, because we all teach each other and we're all students as well, because it's about promoting unfoldment in everyone. And I think you're right about that sharing. You know, when you're not communicating from a place of living it, you want to convince other people that you're actually doing it. So by getting that response, you can believe it yourself. And there is, again, this distance within yourself between what you believe and what is. I think any real teacher has a consistency that can be found. And I always tell people, please dissect me, because it is important that one should have an absolute consistency between what is being taught and what is being lived. And it has to then come from what's being lived. Therefore, I only teach based on what I have experienced and observed and figured out. Nothing ever comes from books and from anyone else. It's only from the journey I've been through. And that's it. And that's also how, even as a person, I can know that I'm not trying to convince anyone, because it's basically stuff that has happened, realizations that have occurred. And to me, there are teachers in many different levels, but I think that consistency between life and what is being taught, to me, that is the big difference. Because even, someone teaching on kind of a more simple level, when you have that consistency, you know still that what's being taught is coming from a place of truth. Whenever it's that convincing part, it's not integrating. That person is trying to convince himself or herself through others. And that is just perpetuating that illusion of the ego. And I think it's really important to understand the difference, because you can meet teachers everywhere, on different levels. But it's that consistency. And I think whenever we exchange as people and try to support each other, when we give each other advice, the best advice always comes from experience, because that comes from a place of truth. It's the same thing. But today, where it's so simple to create also a persona and portraying oneself as a teacher and, create followers and all that, people are easily fooled. And
in California especially, oh my
I think
God,
especially
so many cults.
everywhere. Yeah, right. But it's because when people choose that, it also reflects their own level of consciousness, and that's fine. But I think many people, just like you, have also come to that place where they're starting to see through it. And they want kind of what is real, but every single individual will have to go through this process of being able to differentiate and recognize what is actually, supporting my growth, and what kind of individuals, would that be, and what kind of exchanges. So it takes time, and just like you, most people will have to go through so many, books and teachers and classes and courses and whatever to connect with those beings or spaces or whatever it is that one can sense will promote the growth for real. And that is also part of realizing that, I am my own path. I need to gather my team, I need to kind of find those manifestations that can mirror my own spiritual potential. And that should be compatible with my path.
And it's an individual thing,
Yes.
I'm really saddened, when I see someone, for me, when I see a person obsess over a guru or a teacher, it saddens me, because I feel like, in a way, you took a part of your soul and it's a necklace now, and now you've taken that part of your soul, and it could be a big part or a small part, but you've taken it and put it on that person's neck and said, here, you carry this part of my soul for me. And now I don't have to worry about that myself, because you handle that. And by me praising you, I'm not doing the work.
Exactly.
I am actually just, kissing your ass for having done the work and being happy you did the work and admiring the fact that you did the work. But really, how much am I growing here? Because I think the admiration takes up so much of the work that you lose
Yeah.
And it goes even deeper in the dogma of religion with people who they will no longer question where they come from. They will no longer question how to evolve spiritually. They'll just say, hey, I believe in this God. This God created me and the universe, and I will take this part of my soul and give it to them. And it's like, and so like, it's different versions of that, whether it's a teacher or a God. And a religion, like I feel like a lot of people give up too much of themselves and too much of their own computing, aspects of themselves. Like you need to solve for yourself in your own
Yeah.
consciousness.
But remember
these
that
things.
you have reached a level in your own evolution where you understand this. Most people have not. And it means that they will seek out the teachers and religions and whatever it is.
Even in science, it's a dogma to think that all that.
Yes, but it reflects the level of consciousness. So most people are at that level, and that's fine. And they will seek out whatever mirrors that process until they grow out of it. So when people are in a certain religion or belief system, it's because that reflects their level of consciousness, and they interact with it. And sooner or later, they will find the limitations, because then they're ready to expand. But before that, that's how much they can take. That's how they can study spirituality, because they could not handle standing on their own 2 feet and talking with light directly. It takes courage. It takes a lot of pain, and it takes slowly growing out of suffering. So it's simply different levels of evolution, and we all have to, go through them. So when you observe different teachings, different religions, one can see, like, what are they doing? They're still exercising that level of consciousness. And we do what we do until we do something else. And the fact that you have grown to where you're at does not mean that everybody else can speed up, because you've also taken your time. And
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
so
Taking forever.
everybody will have to move through their evolution in their own time and go through the teachers and authorities necessary for them to start waking up. And I just think it's wonderful that there are so many different approaches and so many different angles to spirituality. And that also now more and more people are starting to wake up, which means that they can embrace a type of spirituality free from all of that. But it takes time. Even when I teach people who have seen through all of that, once they start practicing what I teach, they can still experience that their programmings from these old levels of consciousness are still active and still control them.
Just in different ways, huh?
Yes. And it takes a lot of time to grow out of it for real.
Because you got to become more and more sensitive to the more delicate aspects of your being.
Yes.
And as you become more and more sensitive to those delicate aspects, you start feeling things about yourself that you never felt before. And so you'll see how religion affected that layer of you.
Exactly.
Which is a way more delicate layer than you've ever experienced before.
Yes.
And so you might have to deal with religion again in another side.
That's absolutely true. And often I see that when people come to me and they've been studying with me for years and sometimes decades, they still find themselves being limited by what we can call religious karma, those types of programmings and ways
Like
of thinking.
tattoos on my aura and my etheric body or something. I'll have like a cross there. I'm sure I got tons, man. I probably have tons.
Right. But it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the evolution. And I think, therefore, it's important today to offer other perspectives and just to share and make people aware that there are other ways to do this than through traditions. And for those who feel that it resonates because they have grown out of the other stuff, that they can see, oh, there is a next step. You know, it's not like I'm leaving this behind and then nothing. There is actually a next step. There are teachers that are operating on that level, and I can find them.
And you don't have to get involved in some heavy ancient religion that doesn't get with the times.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.